There's a lot of bullshit in this industry. Poor education, inaccurate testing, and unethical tactics are seen throughout. I've dedicated my profession to cutting through the noise and providing reliable information in good faith so that we can be an industry of excellence.
Matt Mulholland is an absolute legend. I take every training that he does. I tell everybody to take everything that you can with him.
So Matt as an instructor is awesome.
He's able to communicate information at a high level.
He's incredible. He thinks about things in a way that's just completely different than anyone I've ever met.
I am Matthew Mulholland.
I love that video. I mean, I love that video. To take someone like me and make me look that good takes a lot of skill. And John Tillman, my partner at the Building Experts Institute, is our cinematographer, and he definitely makes me look good. All right, this is something I haven't done before, guys. Welcome to the very first Stump Mat session. I want to talk about your claims. I want to help you with your claims. If you are having some issues with any claims, I don't care if you're a public adjuster, you're a contractor, you're an attorney, I don't care. If you're having any issues with your claims, let's work on it together. I'll invite you into this live. I'll send you an invite link, and then you can jump on here and we can go through your stuff together, and everybody can watch us do it. So be careful what specific information we provide. We will probably be working on claims and describing it without putting any personal information online, but we can make this work. I believe in it. I can even use Braille to redact some stuff for us so that if it does have to be on the screen, we can make that work. So if you have claim questions, please ask it of me now. What do we got, guys? What's some craziness is going on? While I'm waiting on someone to say something, either in the chat or otherwise about some claim stuff they have going on, I want to tell you guys a story. I have a YouTube channel called Listen to This Bull. I'm broadcasting on it right now, actually, as well as a whole bunch of other places. But Listen to This Bull first got started because I had a public adjusting firm in Georgia, and we had this bullhead logo as our logo. And our slogan was, "Let us deal with the bull," which was awesome to put on a van and let an adjuster read for the first time. They loved reading that. Not love reading that. So, but that was our slogan. We had an engineer that I met out on site who wrote in his report, and this was a roof claim, an Atlas Chalet. If you guys are familiar with roofs at all, Atlas Chalet was a 3-tab that had extra granules added into one section to make it look like it had a second layer of laminate tooth. So it had this faux laminate Atlas Chalet shingle. And the engineer wrote in his report that the roof was repairable, that even though there was no faux laminates available, so there's no like kind of quality, we could simply install another 3-tab and paint it to match. He wanted us to literally paint asphalt shingles. That was good old Jason Dill. He's still out there. I confronted him on that once. He said he would probably not write that again in a report, but yeah, there you go. So that's the kind of crap that we deal with that led me to create a YouTube channel called Listen to This Bull, because that was some bull. What kind of a person, especially an engineer who is supposed to understand how things work, or at least look it up before they make some kind of a repair recommendation? Why would anyone tell you to paint shingles? Who told him to write that? What a crazy thing to do. All right, if you guys have any questions at all, I want to take your questions live. I want to take your questions. Put something in the commentary here. All right, ask your questions in the commentary. If it's a good question, if it's a good claim, I will pull you online, and we will go over some stuff together in person. So actually, I'll put the invite link right into the comments here. I don't know if it's going to show up on all the places, but if you guys are interested in jumping on the call directly, you can go to this invite link. Looks like it's showing up on the Facebook pages, but not on the personal page and not on the Instagram post. Let me post it in Instagram separately then. Bam. Bam. And I guess I'm going to have to do it on the Facebook personal page. Just bear with me, guys. So obviously when we did that, Where is my personal page one? There we go. And we're going to do it right there. Boom. When we got that report in, we had to argue against it. And as it turns out, just so you know, as it turns out, if you paint asphalt shingles, it will eat the asphalt. Go figure. Go figure. Good evening, Mr. Steffens. How the hell are you? When are you coming to the Houston area? Actually, we are coming to the Houston area. Let me look that up. Post. 1 second, I'll tell you. Building Experts Institute is going to be in the Houston area in July. We're going to be doing a asphalt shingle repairability assessor certification course on the 14th of July. That's the day after my birthday. So on the 14th of July, we'll be in Houston. If you're interested in all, Oscar, since I'm already going to be out there, if you guys are interested at all in doing any kind of a private training type event or something, either on the 13th or on the 15th, I'm down since I'm already going to be out there. Good evening, Mr. Humphrey. I'm great, working on some claims in Brelly right this second, actually. How are you? Brelly, in case you guys don't know, Brelly is an AI platform that helps with claims handling. And we've built this AI platform for public adjusters, contractors, and attorneys, everybody that has a role to play in the claims process. There is a profile for you in that system. I do almost every claim that I deal with, even if it's consulting with other people, I throw it through Brelly. Because it comes back with stuff that I don't think of, and it's amazing. And I know that I think outside the box, and even I don't have it all. I did this one consultation today with a public adjuster. We threw it inside there. He was out of Illinois, and we got some really interesting things back from old bulletins from like 2018 from the Department of Insurance that actually made a difference on a matching claim with State Farm. So we were using the parent set clause that was in the policy and working it that way. If you guys don't know what the parent set clause is, this might be something you might be interested in for you public adjusters and attorneys out there. The parent set clauses in policies is basically a matching clause. They will pay for the for undamaged items that are part of a pair or a set that aren't damaged when one of the other items is damaged, or they will pay for the reduction in actual cash value if they don't replace or repair the undamaged portion. So it's one or the other. It's usually whichever is less expensive, but it is a matching clause. I've used that to great benefit to policyholders in the state of Georgia when, especially describing windows. If I have some windows that are a specific type of window, they have a specific type of tint, they have a specific type of gas inside, and one of the windows gets damaged during a hurricane or tornado, scratched, hail, whatever. If there are matching windows on the front, that is a set. And so from an elevation perspective, at a minimum, arguing that this is a set of windows, they're all supposed to match, they're supposed to look the same profile. From the outside, you can tell that these are the same windows. If you had a different window, a different type there, it'd be obvious. If you were in the living room and there was light shining through, sunlight coming through, two separate windows, two very different windows, it'd be obvious that the sunlight is coming through and one would look like it has a different filter than the other, because it does. So you want to make sure that it is the same window. So using the parent set clause as a matching clause, you can get the undamaged portions paid for. I know other people have used that to good effect. I've never been able to use the parent set clause for matching of asphalt shingles or anything like that, but I have used it for other things. Does anybody have any specific questions? What's going on, Nick, Ethan, Jesse? What's up, guys? Is that only for Illinois? So that happened to be an Illinois claim that we were talking about, and there was a bulletin that provided line of sight. Even though Illinois is not a matching state and there isn't any statutes, there is persuasive cases, but the Department of Insurance created a bulletin about forcing a line of sight on undamaged materials being replaced. But the parent set clauses in policies across the U.S. Upper and lower cabinets, you can do parent set clause for that. It's definitely a set of cabinets. They're supposed to look the same. That's a really good use case for it. You're saying a parent set clause is applicable to the dwelling, windows, not personal property. It is part of the dwelling part of the policy. Sometimes it says item or items in the language, but it doesn't specify personal property. I haven't seen a policy that specifies it. Whether it was supposed to be or intended to be for personal property items to begin with, it might have been, but it never actually says only for personal property items or coverage C items. It never says that. I've never seen one. Doesn't mean there isn't a policy that says that. Undoubtedly, there's going to be some policies that specify that, especially if I start in saying that there isn't in the policy that way. Undoubtedly, there will be a policy. Every policy is different. But the ones that I've seen, they don't specify personal property. They just say an item or items as a part of a set. So items can be part of the dwelling. What about the situation where there are more than 2 windows? There usually are. Houses have a lot of windows. So if there is a lot of windows that are being damaged, or a handful of windows are damaged, and there's several more that need to be replaced as a part of the set, you can use that clause. Now, you might not get the full amount, so it might just be, in essence, a diminution of value type of a payment, where they will pay the difference in the actual cash value without replacing, and what the difference would be if they did replace all of them. So if there is a diminution of value, they might only pay for that difference and not to actually replace. But in my experience, I've gotten them to replace the additional windows. Now, I haven't gone further to try to get them to replace other elevations. This was in Georgia that I did most of my career, and Georgia is definitely not a matching state. There's no statutes, there's no case law. We don't have the bulletin that the state of Illinois had. So without all of that, it was a little bit more difficult to get someone to be on board. But the fact that there was a parent set clause, which is a matching clause, then you're fine. If there is an exclusion for matching in the policy, they might use that exclusion. And if the parent set clause says unless otherwise excluded in the policy, then you might have an issue. But I haven't seen that language that I remember where it specifies that in the parent set clause. So if there is coverage and there's an exclusion, and the coverage is added on and exclusion is taking off, the add-on coverage trumps the exclusion. What about a fence? It doesn't specify what coverage type it is. It doesn't say coverage A, coverage B, coverage C in the ones that I've read. So if it doesn't specify, then it could totally be a fence. Is it a set of fences? Are each of the sections of the fence part of a set or a whole? You could argue that. You could argue that one shingle on a roof is a set of shingles. It's all one cohesive system. If one gets damaged, you could use it for matching for a roof. I've never done that because I've always argued compatibility concerns, repairability concerns first over matching because of the state that I was in, but I have used it for other things. Some people in here are saying, Scott Steffen said that he uses it for upper and lower cabinets. With concrete tiles, is there a difference or distinction between existing tiles and used tiles when it comes to building code? Are we talking about roof tiles? Then yes. So you can, if we're talking about roof tiles, you can reinstall tile that is in perfect condition. That is allowed in R908.5 or 15.0, I don't know, in the building code. Chapter 15 and a chapter 15 and a chapter 9 in IRC and IBC backwards, respectively. Then it says that you shall be allowed to reinstall tile and slate. And so it has to be in perfect working order. In that case, as far as the building code is concerned, it doesn't really matter if the tile is used or not used, but the policy matters, because if you're doing an RCV policy, replacement cost value policy, replacement means to replace with new materials. How do we know that it's always new if it doesn't specify that? And some policies will specify new materials only. We know that because RCV has no depreciation in it. They will pay the amount of loss without any reduction for age and condition with RCV benefits. Now they'll pay a certain amount up front, bifurcate the payment, so you have to make the repairs to get the rest of it as a depreciation payment. But RCV itself has no depreciation, so it must be a new material. Must be a new material with the new materials warranty, because that's how new materials work. So RCV is, in essence, a betterment policy. So that's something to consider. If you're being asked to use a boneyard tile, then that isn't new. It's not in new condition. Even if it is in good condition, it doesn't necessarily have any kind of a manufacturer's warranty with it. And if that boneyard tile yard, the boneyard is trying to paint it to match the other ones, that paint definitely doesn't equate to the same kind of glazing or something that would be done at the factory. Even if they put some kind of a warranty on it, they literally just have a freaking paint booth and they're painting. It's not the same thing as glazing. When you glaze something and you fire it at the same time that the clay tile is there, it gets impregnated into the material. It's not the same thing as paint. Impregnated, that's the word I used. Had a partial 60 square payment. They denied both repairs and said can be repairable. Had a partial 60 square payment. They denied both repairs and said can be repairable. Well, did you prove to them it wasn't? How did you prove to them it wasn't? Did you perform any kind of a standardized methodology to determine whether it was repairable or not? Did you provide some kind of a report to the policyholder for them to send in? Did you prove it? Or did you just say it wasn't repairable because it's brittle or old or something? The only way to prove repairability is with the National Academy of Forensic Engineers standard, written by Chad Williams, the repairability assessment method for asphalt composition shingle roof systems. It's a name similar to what I just said, but it is the only standardized method to assess whether or not an asphalt shingle is or isn't repairable. So it's as objective as possible. The Building Experts Institute, which I'm one of the partners of, actually certifies people in using that methodology. So we teach you how to use that. We certify you in the use of that methodology. Chad Williams, the guy that wrote it for the National Academy of Forensic Engineers, is the one that is evaluating whether or not you are using the methodology correctly. And he's the one certifying people through the Building Experts Institute. You can get certified as a repairability assessor. And in fact, we're doing a tour on that where we're doing it in person. The next set is in Kansas City, Nebraska. Let me see here. We're going to be Kansas City on the 26th of June, Omaha, Nebraska on the 27th of June, and Des Moines, Iowa on the 28th of June. If you're interested in doing the repairability assessor certification, you can go to buildingexperts.institute and look at the event page to get a hold of that. Buildingexperts.institute, not buildingexperts.institute.com. There's no .com. It's just .institute. Very useful. The people that are getting certified have been sending in very standardized reports for repairability, and it is helping them tremendously with the claims because they're showing that they are using a standardized method. It's not a silver bullet like nothing else is, but it isn't being pushed back upon because it's somebody doing everything they can to learn how to do something effectively and then doing that job. How can they argue against someone learning how to say one way or the other? And as a part of that class, we teach you that if it ends up being repairable, then it's repairable. Make repairs. There's repairable roofs out there. It's probably less than the carriers want to admit, but there are repairable roofs. I've made many repairs in my career. I've made almost 400 repairs myself in my career. Ethan Dixon, yes, if Georgia isn't a matching state and we have a homeowner that is getting part of a fence, could we get the rest tied in? If the fence is a part of a paraset, you could use the paraset clause. It wouldn't necessarily pay for all of it, but it could make a difference on the claim. So you'd have to be able to show that there is a loss in value to the property as a result of not replacing all of the sections of that fence. Patchwork causes a diminution of value. And if there is a diminution of value because of patchwork of some kind, whether that be from windows, cabinets, whatever, if the value of the home reduces, the carrier can't knowingly put you in that kind of position, and the liability is on them to make it right. So the policyholder doesn't have any financial loss other than their deductible. That's the idea. Can you use that for asphalt shingles if you get box vents / turtle vents? So what I'm asking, if you can get a full roof approval based on, we need a shingle allowance to get the box vents repaired. So box vents, the way that they're installed on roofs, they are tied into and in course with the shingles. So in order to remove and replace a box vent, you are manipulating the shingles. If the manipulation of those shingles causes those shingles to be damaged unavoidably, whether the carrier wants to admit it or not, if they get damaged unavoidably, then that is part of the replacement cost value of the vents, and it should be part of the claim. Now, how many shingles need to be replaced along with each of those vents becomes the question. So with the repairability methodology that the National Academy of Forensic Engineers has published and that the Building Experts Institute certifies people to use, you can determine roughly how many shingles for every shingle that gets manipulated that will end up being damaged, and you can assess how much of that roof needs to be replaced. And it might not be but from the vents up to the ridge. It could very well be just that, but that is something that needs to be assessed. Now, if you're causing mat transfer or causing damage that cascades downward, that'd be a whole nother story. So if you guys are interested in that, you can take a look at that. I think you answered my question. Roof tiles, that's what we're talking about. Reasonable uniform appearance. Will the carrier reimburse the policyholder if the policyholder hires their own engineer expert, or will they only reimburse the policyholder if the carrier does not decide to bring out their own expert during the claim process? So I know it's hard to get them to approve it, but the carriers should pay for any expert hired by the policyholder in order to help prove their loss. Whether the carrier wants to agree to it in advance or not doesn't really matter, as long as the policy doesn't have an exclusion for it. So there are many policies that will exclude professional service fees from public adjusters and attorneys, but they don't specify engineers or contractors or something along those lines where they're used to prove the loss for the policyholder. If the policyholder is utilizing that as part of their proof of loss in order to help prove their loss, then that is something that is part of the replacement cost value of that home. It costs them a certain amount of money to do that. The carriers are paying to help prove the loss as well. It's part of their own cost analysis on when they have a claim. So the policyholder is not supposed to come out of pocket anything but their deductible. Now, if they hire a public adjuster or an attorney and the policy specifies that they are not going to reimburse them for that, then they can't. Otherwise, technically they do, though I would never really try in certain states. I would never try to get the public adjuster's fees paid for because you will look ridiculous if you try to get that in certain states. But outside of that scenario, it is something that's in there. So if they say, no, we're not going to pay for that engineer's report because we didn't agree to it up front, get a denial letter, find out exactly what their reason for it is, get them to put in writing why they are denying that financial burden that was put on the policyholder, and then ask them for some language from the policy that allows them to say no to that. So if there is a covered loss and the engineer is out there identifying the damages from that covered loss, then there should be coverage for any extra expenses that the policyholder has to pay in order to prove that loss. That is definitely a built-in thing for policies. They're going to fight you on it. They're going to push back on it, but ultimately it's a policy language issue. All right, here we go. One of my reps just got certified and he has got a few repairs changed to full replacement using the certification. Hell yeah. That's great to hear. Alex, I really appreciate that. If you guys are interested in getting certified as repairability assessors and to help get your repairability arguments to have a little bit of weight behind them, get yourself certified. We are on tour with that. You can go to buildingexperts.institute. In fact, I'm going to make a banner about this real quick. Un momento. This mic, buildingexperts.institute. Then you can go to events schedule. That website. Go to that website right there, and you can see where we're going to be closest to your location. We are also certifying people online now. You don't have to go to one of the in-person courses. It's just easier to go to one of those. It's the same price. It's just easier to go to one of those. If you get certified, you also end up on a registry, a list that's on our website that people can go and hire you from. You can go to buildingexperts.institute and find all the people that are certified, and they can hire you to perform repairability assessments on other properties. My son got certified in Atlanta. Liam Mulholland, and he's in the roofing industry now, and he is now doing repairability assessments for different contractors and a couple of attorneys. I think it's an attorney. Maybe it's a public adjuster. I'll ask him later. So that website, if you want to do that. All right, where are we at? That was that one. That's really good news, man. Just PM'd you. All right, Byron. How do I prove to the insurance that the siding is asbestos when ITEL won't let me send it to their lab? Interesting. Well, you could send it to a different lab that tests for asbestos. I didn't know ITEL did that. That's interesting. It makes sense that they wouldn't want you to send, a substance like asbestos through the mail. It's almost like sending them anthrax or something crazy like that. You're going to end up on the news with a hoodie or something and look like you're going to blow something up. You can send it to an industrial hygienist or a air quality laboratory or something along those lines in your area. If you'll find an abatement contractor in your area and ask them where it is that they send their materials to, then you could send it off. So you need somebody that is certified, potentially, depends on your state, certified to remove materials in order to send it off. Or you could hire an industrial hygienist or an air quality specialist or someone like that to come out and test it on site. And they could take their own samples, which is usually better because there's no question on the chain of custody, which is, how you get that material from one place to the next, who had the control of that material, all that stuff. So find an abatement contractor and let them send it off to a lab to get tested for asbestos, and then they can set a protocol. If you do a industrial hygienist or someone along those lines, they'll do the testing and ask them to set a protocol on what it is that needs to be done in order for you to repair or replace that. And it will put in all the steps necessary to basically build a scope of work for you. And then you just have to build that scope of work out in your estimating platform. And then you say, hey, insurance company, this is what it takes. Here's the amount of loss. Here's the protocol that was set by the third-party expert on exactly what has to be done. It's weird. Sucks that ITEL won't take that. Not the biggest fan of ITEL myself. I've gotten a lot of false information from ITEL over the years. It is awesome. He's talking about the repairability class. Will you be hosting another event in the Southeast again this year? Yeah. I mean, I live in Nashville, and unfortunately, guys, for those of you that don't know, we have been booted out of our facility. You guys have seen my facility online in so many different videos. It is freaking awesome. It has this huge industrial vibe. And then Disney decided they were going to buy that building and create a television show out of it. So Nashville 911, the television show done by Disney, is going to be out of that building. So they booted us out, which really sucks. But we found a new location. We're going to be moving into there later this week. And so we'll still have an event space that's available, but we'll do more stuff at our own event space once we get it back up and running again at the new location. But we do things in the Southeast all the time. I am constantly in Atlanta. I do a lot of private trainings in Georgia. I have a huge audience there. And since most of my career was in Georgia, I do a lot of private trainings there. In fact, if you're interested in doing any kind of private training with me, I teach contractors, public adjusters, and attorneys. That's my primary job. I go to wherever your office is, and I can help you guys out in person. One of the primary things that I'm teaching is exactly what kind of documentation to send into the carrier and when to send it in. And that's probably the most important thing that you can learn to work claims in today's market, is exactly what needs to be documented, how to document that effectively, and when to set it in. And most of that is done at the very, very beginning, which simplifies the whole process, sets the narrative from the very beginning. You can even set the definition of damage. You can claim cosmetic damage, and they'd have to actually talk about it because you did it correctly up front, because they only have to investigate what's claimed, so you have to claim it. So if you're just going to claim hail damage and they come out and say there's no hail damage here, and really they're saying there's no Hague hail or some bullshit like that, if the policy doesn't have an exclusion for cosmetic damage, then it owes for cosmetic damage. All you have to do is say that's what you found, put that in an inspection report, give that to the policyholder, let them send that in. And now the carrier has to investigate for cosmetic hail damage. It's all in the way that it's written. And so we have a lot of templates and things that we put together. We have a lot of information on exactly what photos are necessary, because you don't want to give them 350 photos. You want to give them 10 photos that matter, because those are the only amount of photos they're going to look at. They're not going to read a 15-page inspection report, but they will read about 5 bullet points, and they'll look at 10 photos. And then the rest of it can be boilerplate crap that they don't need. So there's so much information that you can put down in order to make sure that it's set, provide it to the policyholder, let them send that in, and let the policyholder get an adjuster that knows what it is they're supposed to be investigating. It helps out tremendously. I do that. That is private training I've done for many, many contractors and public adjusters over the years. 11 different contractors this year have adopted that because of some private trainings that I've done. Other than the most recent one, they've all come back to me. So they're having really good results from changing to that process and procedure, simply because they're doing the one thing that the policyholder is required to do, which is help them prove their loss. Once the policyholder proves the loss, then it's up to the carrier at that point to say, well, no, you're wrong, or there's an exclusion. So until you actually help them prove their loss, that just doesn't happen. So you have to claim it. If you guys are interested in that, I'm actually booking for July now. I'm going to be out of town in the next few days. So I'm trying to finish up my schedule for July in the next 2 days. So if you're interested in private training with me, If you're interested in having me come in and do some stuff with you, please reach out to me either tonight or tomorrow, and I'll be booking out the rest of July. I only have like 4 or 5 days left available in July, and then I'll be booking out August. But try to reach out to me the next day or so, because I want to finalize July's schedule before I go out of town again. Okay, I just got certified a few weeks ago, and I've already gotten 2 overturned. That's great news, man. That is really good news. That certification, you know, it makes a difference because it's credentials. Sometimes we live in a credential world. You know, the carrier is saying they disagree because you're just saying that it is or isn't repairable, doing some kind of a brittleness test probably that isn't really a thing. It's not a thing. Everybody does it differently, so it's not standardized. So it's not a real uniform methodology. Clipper, thoughts on appraisal being broken into Part A and Part B. They pay Part A, they don't pay Part B, both from same data loss and peril. Also, they take out a $5,000 deductible out of the first payment made before appraisal happened. Then they take out the $5,000 deductible again out of the appraisal award. Thoughts on appraisal being broken to Part A and Part B. I'm going to need more context. I don't know if I understand what you're asking me, Clipper. I have had appraisal awards come back in the state of Georgia, scope is not appraisable because of some bad case law. And so if I had a State Farm appraisal and it came back with a full roof replacement, but the scope that the carrier approved was 7 shingles, they might take the entire roof, divide that by the amount of shingles that are on that roof, and then multiply that by 7 and then pay that amount minus the deductible, which is probably under deductible anyway. And then they say, well, we're not paying anything. And they get to arbitrarily make that decision because it was a different scope. And the public adjuster or somebody that was involved didn't set the scope of the appraisal correctly in advance. They didn't set the appraisal memo correctly. So the real question is, whatever it is you got going on, it really needs to be agreed to what it is that you're appraising before you start the appraisal process. And that's part of the appraisal memo. So when you name your appraiser, there's going to be a lot of information that you want. This is what the scope of the appraisal should be on. This is what we were asking the appraisers to appraise. And let them come back and disagree with you and say, well, no, we want the scope to be this. And then you can go back and forth on what that scope of work should be for the appraisers in advance. If they're taking out a second deductible, then they're trying to say that there's 2 separate claims involved. How come there's only 1 claim number? If they're saying that there's 2 different events, that's 2 different claims. That's 2 different claim numbers that cannot exist on a claim. You cannot have 2 deductibles on a claim. It doesn't make sense if it is from a singular event. Unless the policy allows for multiple deductibles, which it just, not for storm claims. I know that's what you're talking about. They sell test kits for asbestos on Amazon. I'm sure the Amazon test kit will be accepted by all carriers. I don't know. I don't know if that's really the right move. Maybe. I think I'd rather get a third party involved. It depends what the engineer is hired to do and whether or not they're going to be paid for. Thanks, Leland. Leland is one of the smartest people in this industry. If he has something to say about it, I would listen. And he often has a lot to say about things. So if you guys aren't following Leland Kuntz or are not friends with him on Facebook, you ought to be if you are in this industry. He is a very smart individual. Claim policy has asbestos abatement exclusion. Any other possible way to get that portion paid? Asbestos abatement exclusion. So there is a lot of asbestos exclusions in policies. You have to be careful. The policies, for the most part, there are a lot of new policies now that change this. But if the policy is more than 3 years old, it's been around for more than 3 years, most likely the asbestos exclusion in it is for the liability portion only. They won't pay for any asbestos as the cause of like health risks, anything liability related. If it's a very new policy, then they have a lot of asbestos exclusions where the abatement of asbestos is excluded, kind of like what you have going on there. Any other possible way to get that portion paid? Well, you can still get replacement cost value from a repairability standpoint. Can you get new materials? If you can't, then replacement of all of that is going to be paid for either way. And the abatement of that should be part of the replacement cost value. If the abatement is itself the only reason that you're having to replace the rest of the materials, then that's usually how that exclusion works. It's almost like a matching clause. They won't pay for the undamaged portion just because they have to pay for the abatement. But if they're already replacing the entire thing because of compatibility concerns with new materials being installed with it, then it really negates the whole language from that exclusion. If it reads the way that I remember that exclusion reading anyway, I could be wrong on that. We'd have to look at the exact language on there. Leland Coots, thanks, man. So I'm assuming based off your comment, we are assigning ABCD engineer group to determine if the engineer the insured hired is correct on his assessment means it would be paid for. If the, yeah, I mean, if you're verifying somebody else's work and it turns out that they're wrong, that should definitely be paid for by the carrier, in my opinion. Again, it becomes anytime an engineer is hired to identify the extent of damage or something along those lines for a covered loss. If they are a part of a report, if the report is part of helping the policyholder prove their loss, then there would have to be an exclusion of the policy for it not to be covered. Whether or not you actually get that paid is going to end up being an argument in many cases. Doesn't mean it's not covered, though. It just means that the carrier is going to fight you on stuff. I had an appraiser intimidate 2 of my appraisers by claiming the contractors were acting as adjusters for including code items into their scope of work. This led my appraiser to accept an incorrect scope of work, claiming the contractor were acting as adjusters for including code items. That's stupid. Listen, guys, I want to address something. This bothers me. I've had a lot of flack in the last week and a half for talking about a thing with Brelly. Brelly is an AI platform for claims handling. And we have a profile for contractors. If you are a contractor that's working on claims, then it means that you have a role to play in the claims that you're working with, right? Engineers are getting involved in claims. They say, hey, I was working on this claim. I got this claim assignment, this claim assignment. They say claims too. And when the carrier has a contractor involved, their preferred vendors, they work claims also. So if contractors can't be involved in claims, then the carrier can't have managed repair programs. Simple as that. But if they're going to fight me on, and they're arguing that saying that contractors have claims or work claims is wrong, false, or illegal. And that just isn't the case. You guys are involved in claims. So there is a thing that you guys do involved in claims. You can't take contractors out of claims. It's necessary for contractors to be involved in claims, 100% necessary. Otherwise, the work would never get done. And the carriers need specific information from contractors that they normally would never have to provide to a policyholder. So they're asked to do a hell of a lot more by the carrier than they ever would for a retail job. So are they working in claims? Absolutely. If you are a contractor working in claims and you want help avoiding the unlicensed practice of public adjusting or the unlicensed practice of law, then you might need some help because it's getting harder and harder to avoid that line unless you're using AI. Brelly has the ability for you to provide the policyholder with the means to fight for themselves. If they don't have a public adjuster, there might still need to be a policy argument to be had. If you're a contractor, you're not allowed to advise them on what that policy argument is, are you? You're not allowed to advise them on what's going on with their claim or what they should do next. But you can provide them referrals. And if you're referring them a platform that can help them do that for themselves, and that's what Brelly does, then you can still help benefit the policyholders that you're working with. And then you can just focus on being their expert. This is the damages that we found. This is why we think it was on that data loss. This is why we think it was caused by this. Here's our estimate, our scope of work. We can discuss our bid all we want. This is what contractors do. And if there is an argument we had over coverage, hey, Mr. Policyholder, it looks like there's a coverage argument here. Here is a platform that you can utilize, and Brelly will walk you through what should happen and then help you do that. It'll strategize for the policyholder exactly what should happen next and then help them do it upon them asking it to help them to do that so that you aren't the one that's advising them to do it. You're just providing them the opportunity to be able to help themselves. There is a 6-week program that we were putting on for contractors on this to teach you how to do that. And you get use of Brelly and you get the ability to work on your claims in a workshop-like environment. We're going to teach you over a 6-week period exactly how to put AI in your processes and procedures and to help get the policyholders involved to do the same thing as well. Or get a public adjuster involved inside of the system, also using Brelly. All of these individuals that are working on claims can work inside of Brelly together. One second, guys. I got to grab 2 seconds. Don't leave me. It's only going to be a second. I'll have it here in a second. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I'll send that to you in a second. All right, sorry guys. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about Brelly. So if you guys are interested in that, by the way, let me put a different banner up. There's this one. You can go to aitools.brelly.com/AIMat. We are starting that 6-week platform. The very first class starts in 2 days. We literally have like a handful of seats left. We want it to be a small group. If you're a contractor that wants to do better on claims and simplify things, that's the way to go. AI can make your life a lot easier by allowing the policyholder to help themselves without you crossing that line. And there is so many things that you can do, and you can look so much better in the eyes of the carrier because you're not crossing that line, and you can protect your company and the liability of your company quite a bit that way. So if you're interested in that, that is a program that starts in just 2 days. And there's limited seats. So jump on that now. There's the link. I highly recommend, if you are a contractor in this industry, doing that. So there's like 3 things that we're doing, and they really all tie together. We teach repairability assessment at the Building Experts Institute, along with inspection procedures and all that kind of stuff. But the repairability assessor certification can help you prove that something is or isn't repairable with a certification. We do private training to help you identify what the specific documentation that you need to provide is, so the policyholder can help prove their loss. You're going to help them prove their loss so that the carrier is required at that point to identify that you're wrong or show you there's an exclusion involved. And so once you help them prove their loss, and they're able to do stuff, and then if the carrier is still fighting you on that and it becomes an issue, then you could use Brelly to help fight that argument, either for the policyholder, helping them fight the argument themselves, or if a public adjuster wants to get involved, fight the argument. It'll help you do all the things that you want to do as a contractor. All those things work so closely together. It's very synergistic. But in my opinion, if you had to choose one over the other, I think the private training is probably the most important of all that, because if you're not providing the right documentation up front, if you're not giving them exactly what's necessary up front, then you're not setting the stage for the entire claim. All right, how far into my claim? No, we did that. Thanks, man. We did that. That was that one. Cedar Shake Queen. That doesn't help. Thanks. Appreciate what you do. Thank you, Drew. I appreciate you. Hi, Roger Fraser. I suddenly can't post a lot of comments in different places. I just got an error on this. Hey, if you guys have any claims questions, it's Stump Mat. I don't do this almost ever, so take advantage of it. I'm probably going to be on here for another hour or so. You got time. If there's a claim question or some kind of a way that you guys are having issues, please, by all means. Let me do this. aitools.relly.com/ what was it? AI Matt / AI Matt. There it is in the comments. Put it in the Instagram comments as well. Instagram, bam, bam. Post. Facebook personal page commentary. Stay on page. Post that. All right, now we're good. Okay, guys, error occurred. Wait a moment. Let's try again. We are having some issues with some of the links making it through to some of the platforms. I am here for you, ladies and gentlemen. If you have claim questions, if you have any kind of crazy questions, try to stump me. If you are able to stump me, there's plenty of people on this live with us that might be able to answer that question as well. And if you have a good question or would like to come on the show, I will send you an invite link and you can come on the show. We can talk it out together. Would anybody like to come on the show? Please let me know. Please let me know. I feel like I'm missing some commentary here. Checking all the different places real quick, guys. Virginia, Maryland area soon. We are going to do, I'll tell you what, I'll show you guys the page. Let me just do a share screen and I'll show you what we have available. Present, share screen, window, share. We're going to go to buildingexperts.institute and I'm going to go to events. All right, we are on buildingexperts.institute's website. Going to hit events, upcoming events. We've got Kansas City, Missouri, Omaha, Nebraska on the 27th. We've got Des Moines, Iowa on the 28th, Denver, Colorado on July 9th. Actually, that one's not happening. We moved it to a different one. I don't know why that's still there. Here's Denver, Colorado, July 15th. That one's happening. Houston, Texas on July 14th, Denver on the 15th, Chicago, Illinois on the 19th. I'm going to be in Chicago on Saturday the 19th doing a repairability assessment. I am actually, if you guys are in Illinois, I'm looking for an Illinois contractor to come in and do private training for on the 18th. I'm going to be in Chicago anyway. I might as well see if I can't book that day out. So if you guys are in Illinois specifically, that is a date that is not available in other areas. Only 18th for Illinois. If you guys are interested in a private training with me, please reach out to me if you're in Illinois, anywhere near Chicago. St. Louis, Missouri on July 21st. And that's what we have on the books right now. There will be more, but no, we're not in, we're not going to be in, where do you say, Maryland just yet, although we are talking about doing a Boston and a Connecticut somewhere event at some point soon for the Building Experts Institute. What did you say will give you a protocol? That would be a industrial hygienist or an air quality specialist can set a protocol for asbestos. You can get a certified abatement contractor that can set a protocol too, but I would prefer to go to an industrial hygienist if you can find one, or someone certified in air quality, something along those lines. They'll do the testing for the abatement. They'll set a protocol on what it takes to bring them back to a pre-loss condition, what it all is required, that kind of thing. See if that's all the questions. Insurance is not approving the whole roof because a potential match will fade and match with time. Is that acceptable? That's a stupid thing. All right, let's imagine this, insurance carriers. Let me get rid of this banner. Imagine this, insurance carriers. This part of the roof is really old and faded. We're going to put a brand new shingle in there, and we're assuming this brand new shingle will eventually become old and faded like this one, except this one is also going to continue to age and fade some more. Will they ever catch up? No. That's a ridiculous statement. Is the policyholder required to wait for the property to repair itself? How long are they required to wait for the shingles to start matching themselves? Will this happen within a decade? Will this happen within a year? Does anybody actually know? Because I don't. And to be honest with you, if I don't know, then probably not many people in this industry would know if there is even a knowable thing there. How long does it take to fade? And does that matter? Because the rest of it's going to continue to fade otherwise too. It will never match. It will never match. That's a ridiculous statement. So if the carrier is saying you can replace these with brand new shingles and then that will fade to match, that's just stupid. That makes no sense. Oh, any events close to Maryland? We are going to do an event in the Boston area soon. It's not on the schedule yet. We're also going to do an event in Connecticut soon. We're also doing these in Spanish, by the way. All the places that we're going to, if you speak Spanish as your primary language, you can go to those events in Spanish. Okay. Here we go. Example of the documentation importance you were just talking about. All state approved rain cap and denied all hail damage to shingles. Used most of the same photos, same damage photograph that Seek Now had taken with photos clearly labeled, leaned into the lack of cosmetic exclusion, what that meant along the collateral shown, submitted with a sworn proof of loss, full approval with zero pushback. For you contractors that can't do a sworn proof of loss, what you can do is establish that you have found cosmetic damage on the roof and put that in writing with a good full report that explains how you identify when something is or isn't damaged and where that line, that threshold is. This is, we know it's not damaged, and then it hits this line, and then we know it is damaged. That's basically setting the definition of damage for your own investigation. You have to identify when you decide that something becomes damaged, when it is or isn't. Every expert does that. The carrier's engineer decides when something becomes damaged. That's why they define damage. That's why Hague has this functional damage definition they use, because the policy doesn't have a definition of damage in it. So if the policy isn't going to provide the definition, then they have to say, this is when we decide that something is or isn't damaged. They have to. You have to when you are making some kind of an expert opinion. You can do that too. You roofing contractors have the ability to say, this is what the definition of damage that we are using is. We found cosmetic damage, and this is what it looks like. Small circular areas of localized granule loss on the windward sides of the roof where hail has impacted the shingles and caused granule loss in the small circular patterns, whatever you want to say. And then define damage. The courts have defined damage in a similar fashion across the U.S. The definition I like to use, you guys are taking notes, a distinct, demonstrable, detrimental physical alteration to tangible property. Distinct and demonstrable mean roughly the same thing. You can point to it. It's distinct. It's right there. That's where hail hit. Hail hit right here. Here's general granule loss, but the hail hit right there. I can see the small circular to semicircular area of granule loss where the hail impacted that one little spot. There's a dent in the vent. That's where the hail impacted. That's distinct. It's demonstrable, meaning it's demonstratable, meaning I can measure it in some way. Detrimental means it got worse. If it didn't get worse, then it hasn't been damaged. Distinct, demonstrable, detrimental, physical alteration. It has been changed physically in some way caused by a hail event. Now, if they're going to argue that it's not hail damage, it's wear and tear, there's all kinds of bullshit that goes along with that, right? Either they're saying that the wear and tear, the age of the roof, allowed the hail to cause damage, which is how Donan would do it based on the way that they've written what their proximate cause definition is, which is crap because it's not a real proximate cause. The efficient proximate cause is the hail or the wind event. Or they might be saying that granule loss caused by hail is expected and normal and is itself wear and tear. So depending on which way they're using wear and tear as their denial will depend on how it is that you would want to combat that. So ultimately, the best thing you can do is actually just say, well, this was hail damage, cosmetic damage caused by hail. Here's a photo of general wear and tear versus a photo of a distinct detrimental or demonstrable detrimental physical alteration to properties, semicircular area of granule loss. General wear and tear, hail hit. You can see a distinct difference between the two. We're claiming the hail hits. If you can show them that kind of a thing, then they get rid of the whole wear and tear as the cause of loss issue, because this is a very distinct thing. Now, hail does not cause damage to every roof. It is not an expected event for hail to cause damage to a roof. So for the carrier to say that hail damage is itself wear and tear is asinine. They've been paying for hail damage for years and years and years. Why is it suddenly now wear and tear when it wasn't wear and tear before? There's plenty of precedent to say that they have paid for this over the years. It isn't itself wear and tear. It's a ridiculous thing. But there's several different things that you can do about that. If you are interested in learning specifically about wear and tear, you can go to my website, listentothisbull.com. There is a webinar that you can purchase a recording of 2.5 hours long that is specifically about defeating wear and tear denials. Take a look at that, listentothisbull.com. But yeah, documentation matters greatly. If you don't have the right documentation at the right time, you're not going to win the claims and you're not going to do very well. What do you do when you have two different dates of loss? Carrier's date of loss doesn't line up with the meteorology report, data loss / insurance data loss. Which one goes on your submission? The one that the policyholder says it happened on. Look, I'm assuming, Phil, I'm going to assume you're a contractor just because I don't know any better. I'm going to assume you're a contractor. You contractors, you can tell a policyholder when you think the damage occurred, but it's up to them on how to file a claim. It's not up to you. If you're a public adjuster, same issue. If you are identifying when the date of loss was, it's up to the policyholder to agree. Did it happen on that date? This is when we think it happened. Here's some evidence that supports that. Does it make sense that it happened on that date? Do you agree that this is the date of loss? Because it matters. Now, if there's two different dates of loss, it could have been one or the other. If they could both be covered, then it doesn't really matter either. If they could both be covered. So if there's no way to say it was definitely this date or definitely that date, then give it to the benefit of the policyholder. I think the carrier should do that too. So make it the most recent date so they have more time to get depreciation approved, more suit limitation period available to them, that kind of a thing. But if you can't tell, if there's no way to know it's between one or the other event, then it's the event that benefits the policyholder the most, or at least the event that the policyholder thinks it happened on. Now you can get evidence. There's Ring cameras everywhere. And if the policyholder doesn't have a Ring camera, you want to go knock on the neighbor's doors to have a Ring camera? Say, hey, how's it going, man? I noticed you have a Ring doorbell camera, and we are trying to put together an evidence packet for Mrs. Smith right there for her insurance claim to say when the hail event happened that caused the damage to her roof. Do you happen to have a recording of the hail event that we could give to Mrs. Smith? That is the easiest door knock in the world. I guarantee they're going to want to work with you on their claim too. Who knows? Maybe they don't. But you're just trying to help them provide evidence. And by you helping provide evidence, you're doing a hell of a job for your clients. A hell of a job for your clients. I know, but I'm not going to tell. I don't know what that was. I am seeing many large roofing companies being purchased by private equity firms. Also, I'm hearing companies like State Farm will be using registered contractors in their network. Have any thoughts? Well, there are definitely some large roofing companies that are being created. This entire industry is changing top to bottom. Those larger firms, they don't all work directly for carriers, but some of them do, the managed repair networks that exist. My thoughts are that it's almost an inevitability. Private equity has got a foothold in the industry now. There's going to be Walmarts of roofing. And when Walmart became a thing, then a lot of the small mom and pop places didn't do nearly as well. So unless you can do a better service than what the Walmart of roofing can do, then you've got yourself a little bit of a problem. And will they always go away? No, not all the small mom and pops will go away. And you got some time, you got plenty of time, but it's something to consider. I would definitely start planning ahead. You know, the industry is changing in so many ways. I get often asked by public adjusters, what's going to happen to public adjusters soon? And because of AI, is AI going to change the game for public adjusters? Of course it is. Of course it is. It's inevitable. What will happen to public adjusters? Will they always be a thing? I think that there will always be a valuable service that public adjusters offer. There isn't enough public adjusters in the world. There's too many claims for public adjusters to be involved in everything. So the policyholders are left to fight their own battles, and they don't know how to fight. So there is an issue that we want to fix there, which is why Borelli exists. But ultimately, policyholders will always want to get public adjusters involved. They don't want to do things for themselves. If they can hire someone to do something for them, there's always going to be clientele that want that kind of a thing. So there always will be public adjusters as long as we don't get written out statutorily. So if public adjusters can be a thing, roofing contractors will always be there, whether or not they hire the big mom and pop or the small mom and pops or the Walmarts of roofing that will exist in the future, or if they're going to get the carriers to decide who the roofer is going to be. Carriers have that option now anyway. Most policies have a right to repair clause, meaning that the carrier within a certain period of time must notify you within that certain period of time if they are going to exercise their right to repair, which means that they could send out a contractor to make the repairs or pay you to make the repairs. Most of the time they choose to take we will pay the policyholder the amount reasonably necessary to make the repairs to the damaged property. But if they were to choose, and they did it within the time constraints that the policy has, if they were to choose to make the repairs themselves, a lot of times they have that right. It's built into the policies. There's also the option to repair that's in a lot of policies now. It's different from a right. The right to repair means the carrier can just say, hey, we're doing it, period. You have no say in it. But the option to repair is an option that the policyholder may choose. And with that option, like in the state of Florida, if they have an option in there, it might give them an added benefit. Maybe there's a $10,000 limit for water damage, but if they choose to use their managed repair program of some kind that's written in the policy, then the $10,000 limit goes away. Or maybe there will be something where it says, we'll waive your deductible if you use one of your contractors. These are things that will probably happen at some point in your state. So be aware of it. Maybe become a contractor that the carriers utilize if you're a contractor. I'm not saying that you're going to join the dark side. It's work that a contractor can do. there's a lot of crazy things that happen on that side of things. I don't want to make this a repair program show necessarily. There's a lot to be said about that, and I'm honestly biting my tongue on a lot of it right now. I have noticed more and more in Illinois, even though we are not a matching state, even when ITIL proves the shingles are no longer made, State Farm is fighting that it is acceptable to trim shingles. All right, the reason they do this, the reason they are doing that is because of a paper that Hague wrote, an article. It isn't peer reviewed. What they did was they took some architectural shingles and they installed a new architectural shingle that was a different size into it. They stuck one shingle board with all old into a wind tunnel and tested it. They stuck one shingle board that had all old except for one brand new shingle in the mix that was a different size. It was honestly huge. They cut the sides and they underexposed the shingle, but they put a enormous amount of roofing cement on there, more than the shingle manufacturers would allow. And it wasn't ASTM compliant sealant, but they used so much of that when they stuck it in the wind tunnel, they got similar results in the wind tunnel. They also didn't allow that sealant to cure properly because they did it within 24 hours and it required 24 hours to seal. It was not ASTM compliant sealant. It was the cheap stuff from Home Depot that they used, and they put way too much. And the fun thing about that particular sealant, the reason it's not ASTM compliant is because it will eat away at the asphalt that's on the shingles right then. So the asphalt on the shingle will get eaten away. They have it underexposed, so the sealant probably isn't engaging fully on the lower laminate area. It's got the teeth and it's probably engaging fully on the upper teeth, but the lower laminate area is not engaging fully. You guys know anything about the CertainTeed independent shingle? It had that issue as well, same kind of a deal. But since Hague wrote it and said that you can cut shingles, then the carriers are going to believe anything that they say, peer reviewed or not, because that's what they've been doing for the last 40 years. Why not continue to do that? Is it a biased paper? Absolutely. Does it meet RCV benefit requirements of being new? No, because the warranty is completely thrown out the window the second you do that, because the shingle manufacturers don't allow you to do that crap. It's absolutely asinine to do that. That's why the carriers are doing it, because of this paper. Now, I would have already come out with something about this, except for that paper happens to be behind a paywall, and my attorneys don't like the idea that's behind a paywall because it's copyrighted. So they don't like the idea of me posting something that's copyrighted online. I'm going to do something about it. I haven't found out 100% how I can attack that issue, but that is the reason. It is a garbage paper, to be honest with you. I have so many highlights all over it and commentary over it. I did buy the paper and I just destroyed it in my own commentary, but I'm going to have to do a video about it, I think. A reaction video where I just can't show the language, but I can read it out loud or something along those lines. I'll do that for you guys. But the question becomes, because the carrier is saying that you can do this and there is something there for them to rely upon, then we need something to exist otherwise. We're trying to put together a membership platform for us to be able to write these white papers and have the money to do so, because it takes a lot of time to write these things. But Chad Williams, myself, and a few others are trying to put together a laboratory, expert lab to write these white papers and have a library available of different things that you guys can either individually purchase or become a member of and have access to all of them on. And that's something we'll be putting together over the next few months, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while before we have a paper on everything that's there. What if the insurance company closes a claim out after you presented the roof is not repairable, and you've asked for an engineer or a third party to come make the same repair, and they will not do it, and you're a licensed PA? All right, good question. If you are able to prove that the roof is not repairable using a standardized methodology, which the only one for asphalt shingle would be the National Academy of Forensic Engineers standard methodology, their repairability assessment method that the National Academy of Forensic Engineers has posted, the one that we're certifying people in. If you use that and it is deemed to not be repairable, and then they say, we disagree, then you could simply ask them what standardized method that they have performed. What methodology did they use to make that determination? Because if they just disagree without any basis for that denial, then there's a problem. So asking them for their basis for that decision is important. That's asking them for an official denial letter. According to the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act, if you request
a specific reason why something was denied, even if it's just a partial denial, they have to provide that to you, or they're acting in an unfair way. And the State Department of Insurance will care about that. They're the ones that have the purview over the unfair claim settlement practices. So if they do not have a basis for their decision, if they have not performed any kind of a repairability assessment or sent someone out, then you could say, listen, why don't you send out a contractor of your choice? We'll allow them to do the same methodology that we performed. We'll evaluate what happens during that. We can even help guide them do it. And if the roof is deemed to be repairable, we'll agree to it. If it's deemed that there is additional damages that occur that are unavoidable and it's not repairable, then we would ask you to change your position, or at least reevaluate your position on this. And if they say, no, we're not doing that, well, you have asked them for their basis of their denial. They gave you something that was not a reasonable basis for their denial. They give you some kind of denial letter that just says, no, we disagree with nothing. And then you ask them for a very reasonable step forward to give them something to do, to say, yes, we will do this in order to facilitate moving the claim along. And if they still say no, well, then the Department of Insurance might actually care about that. So the policyholder should file a complaint with the Department of Insurance saying, hey, we've provided proof using the only standardized methodology that exists that the roof is not repairable. And the carrier simply stated that they disagreed without performing any kind of an assessment for themselves or any standardized methodology of their own. And then we offered to allow them to have any contractor of their choice come out and attempt those repairs. And if they could do it without causing further damage, we were going to agree to it. And then they still said no. So that's the complaint. We did these things and they were very unreasonable, and it's very short. It's 1-2 paragraphs tops. If you make it longer than that, if you add in everything that they've done wrong in the claim, they're not going to read it. But that is something that seems so unreasonable for a carrier to say no to, that the Department of Insurance will care. And then the next block, usually when you file a complaint, it's what is the complaint? What do you want the resolution of the complaint to be? In the resolution block, it's so easy for us on our side to say, pay the claim. Pay the claim. That's what I want you to do. That's the resolution. Don't say that, because they don't have the ability to force the carrier to pay an individual claim. They do have the ability to investigate whether or not there's a systemic issue that's going on, whether or not they are violating the unfair claim settlement practices, but they still can't force them to pay that individual claim. So what they can do is force them into doing something very reasonable. So your resolution of that complaint is to have them send out a contractor of their choice to perform the same methodology that you did, the only methodology that exists. And if they're able to make repairs without causing any further damage, then you'll agree to it. And if they can't, then we would ask the insurance company to reevaluate their position. And that's what you want the resolution of the complaint to be, for them to perform that action, to just send someone out. And that's how you get them to send someone out. It looks really bad on them if they still say no, because you just showed them and the Department of Insurance that you are being extremely reasonable. They aren't. One of you is acting in good faith. The other might not be. What if the contractor trimmed the shingles to fit for the repair? We're talking about trimming sideways. Shingle manufacturers do allow that in certain situations, but they don't allow you to trim the top and the bottom unless you're at the top near the ridge. They don't allow you to trim off the sealant area. They don't allow you to trim off the top of the shingle to make it fit. There's a compatibility concern there. If the shingle manufacturer doesn't have any testing for wind resistance with that shingle being mixed with any other type of shingle, if there isn't that testing that has been performed, then it isn't going to be allowed according to new construction techniques and code requirements. Are you supposed to follow new construction code requirements? Yeah, because you're talking about an alteration. If you go to the International Existing Building Code, the IEBC, or go to Appendix J in the IRC, if the IEBC isn't adopted in your area, Appendix J would be in that case. Both of them basically say that an alteration is you replacing damaged items with new stuff. If you are putting new stuff on there, the new stuff has to comply with new construction material requirements. It means it has to come in its own bundles and packages with the ASTM requirements that are on it. The ASTM requirements have to actually apply to that roof. Installing this shingle, shingle A, the brand new shingle, in a roof with a bunch of shingle B that is old and non-compliant and completely discontinued, different size, and those shingles
are not compatible with each other. There's no testing that has been performed to assess whether or not it will meet the minimum wind resistance, fire resistance, hail damage resistance in some cases requirements that are there. And if there is no testing to prove that it has done that, then they can't install that. And then the shingle manufacturer for that new shingle is going to avoid the warranty instantly if you install it not to installation requirements or against their recommendations. And if they void that warranty, now it's no longer installing new material. You've got depreciation from the minute it's installed because you are removing its warranty. That is a value loss. That is depreciation, which is not RCV. RCV has no depreciation. So from an RCV benefit standpoint, can't do it. From a construction standpoint, shingle manufacturers aren't going to allow you to do that. If you're Hague and they want to say, it'll be fine, you just put a shit ton of sealant on it that doesn't comply with anything, then whatever. That's what they said on a non-peer-reviewed paper. I don't think that's a question. All right, let me see if there's anything on Instagram. I'm going back and forth. Nothing there, nothing there. Anything here? Okay, this is good. I got no other questions. Am I running out of questions? Oh, you guys just kicked in. Very nice. From Eric, how do you handle the tile right corner cracks after a hailstorm? TRI technical brief says the high kinetic energy of the hail impact in the lower left corner of the roof tile cause a point load break or crack at the overlock corners, which is exactly right. Those corners do get broken. It's the most susceptible area on the tiles. You would expect that area to get broken before anywhere else, but the carriers want to say that that happens from anything else. It could also happen from buffeting, from the wind, from these events, any kind of movement. It can also happen from footfall. It can happen from falling object. Can it happen from an expansion and contraction if they're installed too tightly together? Yeah. It can happen that way. Can it happen in installation error because they did it that way? Yeah. Does it happen that way very often? No, because if you install these too tight, these channels are designed to kind of link together. These things lock together in a certain way. It's actually really difficult to install tiles too tight unless you're just really bad at it. So generally speaking, they're installed and they're fine. Expansion and contraction is going to happen. Wear and tear is going to happen. It's going to get older. It's going to weaken over time. But that just makes it more susceptible to damage from hail. So if a hail event occurs and there's very clear fresh breaks, and you can see that it's fresh based on the coloration of the tile on the concrete or the if it happens to be, it's usually concrete tile we're talking about on that, then of course the carrier should admit that that is possibly from the hail. So the key is, here's the key. When the engineers are sent out, they're asked to identify the cause of loss. Cause, singular, one cause of loss. But there's multiple causes of losses that might be involved. There might be wear and tear involved. So you have to identify what all the causes of loss that are acting on the property are at that time. What are the contributing factors? If not but for X, would Y have occurred? If not but for the age of the roof, would the hail have been sufficient to cause the damage to that bottom corner? If the answer is yes, the hail would totally have been sufficient to cause that damage, then the age of the roof doesn't matter. The answer is no. If it wasn't for the expansion contraction over a period of time that caused that, then it would matter. Either way, the carrier is probably saying that the expansion contraction of that joint weakened that joint over time, making it more susceptible to the damage from hail, and the hail is able to cause damage. And they're just dropping off the hail portion of that. All they're saying at this point is that the expansion contraction made it weaker over time, and they want to say that that is the proximate cause. That's the cause of loss that starts that chain of events. If it wasn't for that, then the hail would never have caused the damage. But the thing is, the expansion contraction doesn't always result in hail causing damage because a hail event doesn't always result from wear and tear. So there is an intervening cause, the hail event still coming through. Without the hail event, the damage would not have occurred. The hail damage would not have occurred. That's why they still call it hail damage or wind damage. Without the wind or the hail event, it wouldn't have occurred. So we have to get them to identify what the hail did or did not do, what the wind did or did not do. So when we get an adjuster involved and they're sending out an engineer, the assignment that the engineer is given matters a lot. If they're asked to identify the cause of loss singular instead of all the causes of loss, you're going to have a problem. But if you can get them, if you can get the adjuster to ask the engineer specifically only this, identify what the hail did to the roof on that date. What did the hail do specifically? Then they're going to make a comment on it. And if you have provided enough documentation up front to say that this is what occurred, now they have to comment on it as well. So you can fix that situation by having the right reporting, allowing the policyholder to prove their loss by having that report in their hands that talks about all the things that had occurred and why you believe that, and attach that research paper that you talked about. Say, this is what occurred. This is why we believe it occurred that way. By having that in writing and the policyholder send that in prior to the inspection, you have allowed the policyholder to claim that, and the carrier has to investigate what's claimed. So if they're claiming that as hail damage, then the carrier is going to have to prove that it wasn't caused by hail. Proving that it has, you've got research papers that say that that happens. Okay. I hope that solves that issue. Hi, Matt. How do you interpret the mortgage clause? I've always seen it not only as a protection to the mortgage holder, but also as another option to help the insured if the carrier refuses to cover. Oh, now I'm intrigued. How do you interpret the mortgage clause? The mortgage clause is basically the mortgagee or the mortgage company is an additional insured basically on the policy. So if their damage to the property occurs, then the mortgage would be on there. If the insured doesn't pay their mortgage or doesn't pay their premiums, then the mortgage company has the ability to have insurance themselves, a force-placed policy. I don't know specifically what you're asking, if you're talking about force-placed policy language or the language that has them put them on the checks. But I am curious. Another option to help the insured if the carrier refuses to cover. A lot of times the force-placed policies, when you get into that part, because you haven't paid your mortgage, you haven't paid your premium, the mortgage company will get something involved, but it's usually ACV only. Curious about this. Obvious loss would in fact damage the asset further and make the asset be underwater on the mortgage company's books in which they loaned against the market. I mean, the mortgage company should get excited about that, right? They should get all up in arms when the carrier is saying no. They don't. I don't know why they don't, but they don't. I couldn't tell you why. I wish they did. It would make sense. You'd have someone built in that has a hell of a lot of power on your side. Suddenly you're not David, you're a Goliath versus a Goliath. But they only seem to get involved when it's a force-placed policy and it's up to them. And there's just so many homes that they have a mortgage on. I don't think it matters to them if they lose on one property a little bit because of the amount of effort and time and probably processes and procedures in place that they just don't have. They don't have the personnel for it. That's my guess. I don't know if that's true. I'm just guessing. I would claim now the adjuster is telling me to basically figure it out. All right, let me go back to where you were. What if the contractors trim the shingles fit for repair and then the carrier is saying basically figure it out? Use the repairability assessment methodology from the National Academy of Forensic Engineers. Show them this isn't how this works. Here is a fail, basically. Here's all the ways in which it failed. Here's a report that talks about that. And then talk to them about what the actual cost of repair is. Proving that a shingle isn't repairable is basically proving that you cannot replace one shingle without having a cascading effect of additional damages. And so how many shingles would need to be replaced when you replace one shingle? And if that is the case, then we have to identify where it is. Is it in a valley? Are we talking about valley middle hospital replace as well? Is it near vents? Or is there extra labor hours that's involved? Replacing one shingle, if it's a repairable roof, might still be replacing other shingles as well, just because of the location of the damages. So a lot of that repairability assessment certification course is talking about that kind of a thing. When would it cost more to repair than to replace? That's what the carriers care about. They're saying you can cut a shingle to size. Great. Find me a manufacturer that allows that. They don't. What am I going to do? I can't provide that to them. I can't provide a warranty in that case. Policyholder needs to get freaking irate about that. I think it would be a good idea for the policyholder to have Brelli involved. Brelli can help them identify what kind of an argument should be made about that very specific thing. And then the policyholder can have Brelli help them write letters to the carrier that argue against them, forcing them into a non-compliant repair. Because the carriers always, 100% of the time, every single time, owe for a proper repair if they're going to pay for repairs. Every time, they just do. They do. Whether the Policy says that they don't owe for consequential damages as the result of a condition that is excluded against, such as wear and tear in the farmer's policy. That doesn't matter because consequential damages are indirect damages, and we're talking about direct physical loss. Damages that occur during a repair that are unavoidable are part of the direct physical loss. They're covered. This kind of thing is always covered. They always owe for a proper repair. So this is something, it's a policy argument. So if you're a contractor, policyholder needs to get involved, or they need to get a public adjuster. Or you might recommend a public adjuster or recommend them to use a program like Brelly. Especially if you're involved in Brelly, you can provide them the access to that for free. If you're curious about that, you can check out the 6-week program that we start in 2 days that can teach you how to utilize AI and stay in compliance with UPPA and still be very, very effective and allow your policyholder to fight for themselves again. If you want to be a contractor that has a lot more respect from the carriers, then be just a contractor again, but still have the policyholder be able to make a lot of those fights for themselves. A lot of you contractors out there that you know that you need to get the policyholder involved because you can't make those arguments. But you're also telling the policyholder what to do, which is not okay. Not okay. If they ever find out about that, that is acting as a public adjuster without a license. If you want to avoid that line, then maybe you should join this program. I'll post that link again, aitools.brelly.com/AIMAT. This is a 6-week program for contractors working in claims to teach you how to utilize AI in your day-to-day business to make better files for the claims to give to the policyholder so that they can work the claims for themselves and to give access to the policyholder to work claims for themselves or to get a public adjuster involved a little easier. aitools.brelly.com/AIMAT. That starts in 2 days, by the way, and there's only so many seats left. Honestly, since I've already said it once tonight, it might already be sold out for all I know. But definitely take a look at that. If there are still seats available, it's the biggest no-brainer that there is right now. Honestly, I'm doing a lot of different things, but one of the biggest no-brainers, if you are interested in learning from me, is getting involved in that program. It's 6 hours of instruction and then another 6 hours of working on your claims as a group. But it'll allow you to integrate AI into your business model and do it in such a way that the policyholders can work for themselves so that you aren't violating UPPA. And it starts in 2 days. So we're shutting this thing down. Once we sell out and we want a small group, it's a small group. There's only so many seats. We don't want to have 1 million people in this thing. So if you are a contractor doing that, you should do it. It's very inexpensive. This is why it's a no-brainer. It's literally less than $1,000. If you were paying for my time, it would be over $7,000. That's how much I charge for my time on a claim-by-claim basis. But as a part of this program, it's only $1,000. It's less than $1,000. Get in that, contractors. Come on. I'm surprised there's any seats left. There might not be actually, but there's probably a few seats left because everybody waits to the last freaking second to do everything. Will there ever be a solution for small dollar amount disputes under $5,000? Appraisal typically costs between $1,000 and $2,000, and no PA is going to take on those claims. These solutions put all the power in the insurance company's hands by forcing the homeowner to come out of pocket more, but without a guarantee of success. So they often view it as a gamble and give up before they even start. Yeah, we had that solution. It was called a fee shift. Some states still have it. If you file suit and you win, in some states, the attorney's fees get paid for by the losing party. Texas, Colorado, California, I think. Florida had that. It just lost it. They decided that the attorneys should not get paid by the carrier if the carrier acts inappropriately any longer. They act in bad faith. So in the states that don't have that fee shift where the policyholder's attorney gets paid by the carrier, then it's very, very difficult to work claims like this. The only real solution now involves AI. So I think that program that I just posted, probably the best case scenario for a situation like this. Let the policyholder fight it. Let them show how ridiculous it is. Let them use the nuance and negotiation tactics that are built in the program to write a letter that makes it so apparent that the carrier is acting inappropriately that if they say no, they really look like assholes. As long as there is a legitimate claim, all that you're looking for is for them to act fairly. And so this can help write those letters to show them that they're not acting fairly. Brelly is awesome. Y'all should do it. I agree. Brelly is awesome, and y'all should do it. I never say y'all, though. This is the first time I said y'all publicly. I look like I would say it all the time with this app. It's awesome. We love it. Thank you guys. I really appreciate the love. It has come a long way. It has come a long, long way. Brelly is really impressive. I don't think I'd want to do a claim without Brelly anymore. I think it's at the point, even as a public adjuster, public adjusters have a lot of additional tools inside of Brelly that the contractors won't have access to, but the policyholders would. But those tools that the public adjusters have in there, I wouldn't want to do a claim without it anymore. It makes it so much easier to work a claim. It gets all of the researched bullshit out of the way for me. And then it can help me strategize what to do next. And then it can just help me do it. Do I have to oversee it? Yeah, because I have a license. That's what a public adjuster is supposed to do. Man, this saves so much time and effort and has taught me so many things. It has been able to do things I've never been able to do as a public adjuster, and I believe I was really good. I have polybutylene in the home. It burst suddenly. That is a type of pipe. They have affirmed coverage. I know they do not cover the area of repair of the burst pipe. However, the piping outside of that cannot be repair safe. So, yeah, so they offer access to gain access to make repairs. But if you can't make repairs, then why can't you make repairs? Is it because it's been outdated? It's been written out by code. The code officials don't allow you to do something like this. This might be an ordinance and law issue. If you can make repairs normally and then you pay for all the access there, but now you have to bring it up to code in order to make proper repairs because you cannot tie anything into it. It's either compatibility concern for the burst area that they don't owe for repair on. This becomes an ordinance and law issue because they're not actually paying for the burst pipe repair necessarily, but they are paying for the damage to the surrounding materials and they are paying for access to get to the area to make repairs. So there's all that kind of stuff. But if they're not already paying for the repair, then replacement cost value of that repair, which would include the replacement of all the rest of the piping in order to have a compatible material, wouldn't exist. It doesn't get triggered because they don't have any RCV for that pipe in the policy yet. But ordinance and law can pick up the difference in many cases. There is different ordinance and law language in every policy. In many cases, the ordinance and law can pick up that difference if they have it, if they have enough of it. Ordinance and law building code exists in the policy. Adjuster is saying they do not owe for the piping to be brought up to code due to the inherent or latent defect, and the piping is not a covered peril. They might be right. It really depends on the policy language for the ordinance and law language. It really does. So oftentimes they'll have a damaged materials and it has to be damaged by a covered peril in order for the ordinance and law to be triggered. But some of the ordinance and law language also says undamaged material. And they'll pay for the undamaged material that is required to be replaced as a due to enforcement of ordinance and law. So you have to look at your specific policy language and find that out. If there's a question on that, there's options. You can go to Interpret That Policy, the Facebook group that I run. You can also get Brelly involved and ask you questions about the policy if you'd like. Give it to a public adjuster or an attorney to take a look at. But it's entirely possible they're right and the ordinance and law language does not pick up that difference. It just depends on that specific policy. Drew Frazier, if you hire an engineer, draw the necessary plans and do the necessary calculations, the necessary presentation in the city to get a permit, all of that is part of the loss. If you hire an engineer to dispute the insurance company, that's really like your claims handling expert in a sense. And you don't get paid for that except maybe if you file a lawsuit and can make that to be extra contractual damages because they treated you wrong. See the difference? I'm going to keep reading on the side here. You guys don't see. Oh, that is the whole thing. In one case, Leland, you wrote a lot. I have been successful in getting those paid for over the years, and there isn't an exclusion in the policy. Now, whether or not they're going to fight you on it and give you issues is a whole nother story. And Leland is right that they're going to fight you on it. But unless there is an exclusion in the policy, it is something that if they're saying there's no covered peril, but you've been able to prove that there is a covered peril because your engineer got involved, without that engineer, you would not have the covered peril. That is part of you proving your loss. So the policyholder's extent of lost money is higher than their deductible in that case. Unless there's an exclusion in the policy that says they will not pay for this. And I've seen exclusions for this kind of thing, but they usually specify public adjuster or attorneys when there is an exclusion. Without that exclusion, I'm sorry, they owe for it. They do. Fighting it? That's another story. And I think that Leland's right. It's going to be a hard fought battle in some cases, and they will fight you on it. But I think it's part of the loss. It has been in many, many cases for me. But every state's a little bit different too. And Leland works in California. There could be some state case law or something along those lines that changes how things work in one state to the next. Just a confirmation, the class is in 2 days and you have another coming up in July. I do apologize. I'm trying to keep up while I work as well. No, I have multiple different courses going on. So the course with Brelli, the 6-week course for contractors to utilize AI in their claims handling, starts in 2 days. And that's at the aitools.brelli.com/AI Matt. I also have repairability assessor certification courses through the Building Experts Institute. That's on tour, and we have plenty of those coming up in July. You can go to buildingexperts.institute to find those, to see where we're going to be at. I also do private trainings through Listen to This Bull, the company that I run. And the private trainings, again, happen at any time. And I'm booking out courses or private trainings in July right now. So 3 different companies we're talking about, 3 different sets of coursework that we're talking about. So it depends on what it is that you want. To be frank with you, I think you need all 3. I'm biased as hell. But I think that they go so hand in hand. What I teach privately to contractors these days, I mean, I teach like 49 different things through private training. I can teach you how to identify damages on low slope roofs. If you're trying to get into low slope materials, I can teach you how to interpret policy. If you're a public adjuster, I can teach you how public adjusters work in claims, and you can get more work from public adjusters if you're an attorney. I can teach so many different things, but what I teach the most is what documentation is necessary and when to submit it to simplify the claims process so that you are setting the expectation of what needs to be investigated from the very beginning and helping the policyholder prove their loss. Whether you're a contractor or a public adjuster, this is very, 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 very important, especially in the world of AI, because they are setting the reserves from the very beginning. Within seconds of the claim being filed, the reserves are being set by AI in many different cases. And they're using the estimatics that are in there. The only way to stop that is to have a legitimate bid in the system. So you need to submit all your stuff up front with them. I can show you what to submit, what it should look like that actually works. In many cases, the students that I have that have taken this course have gotten State Farm to pay for claims without ever sending an adjuster out, because there's so much documentation up front that combats the denial before they ever get it. It is very, very difficult for the carrier to perform the same strategic practices that they have to deny claims. They can't use the McKinsey model if you do these things at these times and the right kind of documentation. So that's what I teach through private training, through Listen to This Bull. If you're interested in private training, just reach out to me by private message and try to do so tonight, actually, and tomorrow. I'm booking out the rest of July before Wednesday. So if you're interested in that and you're trying to get me before the end of July, you need to reach out to me right away on private training. Outside of that, buildingexperts.institute for the repairability certification, and aitools.brelli.com/AI Matt for the 6-week contractor training utilizing AI for claims. You're welcome, sir. All right, let me check Instagram, see if there's any other questions. If you guys have any questions or claim issues, I would love to answer them. Here is a question from Instagram. Yes, it's Eli or Ellie. So the brittleness test on Hague's website is not useful/acceptable for repairability tests. It is not. Even Hague says so. If you go to their blogs, they have said in a blog about brittleness tests that there is no standardized brittleness test. Everybody does it differently. And the only way to identify if a roof is or is not repairable is to actually perform a repair and assess what happens. And in essence, that's what the National Academy of Forensic Engineers methodology performs, is a removal of a shingle and the insert of a shingle, either a new shingle or the same shingle, going right back in the same hole. And all the actions it requires to perform that, evaluated to see if any additional damages are unavoidable while doing it. And then there's a scorecard, and it's as objective as it possibly can be. By performing all of those actions, then you take into account whether or not the shingle gets torn or mat transfer occurs. These are things that don't happen during brittle tests. I find, in my experience, that you end up causing more damage removing the nails than you do installing them. Brittleness takes into account whether or not it's pliable enough to lift a shingle to install a nail. What about removing the nails? What if the decking is half-inch CDX? Removing a nail out of half-inch CDX is difficult. It's strong stuff. And if I have to remove the nail and I can't get the nail head under there perfectly and lift up, then I'm going to tear the shingle up off the nail. It's called a pull-through. That's a fail. It's a shingle that has to be replaced because it's torn around that nail. If I have to break the seals, if I have to separate the seals, I have to separate the seals in order to remove a shingle. The act of separating those seals is difficult at times. If you have a brand new roof, brand new, very pliable, not a brittle roof at all, but the seals are so strong that if you try to separate them, you end up ripping the shingle pieces and causing material transference from one shingle to the next, where there's portions of a shingle stuck to the other one. That's damage to both those shingles. That is assessed during the repairability assessment certification class. That is assessed by the National Academy of Forensic Engineers methodology that a brittleness test doesn't take into account whatsoever. So there's so many things that you do in a true repairability assessment that you would never do during a brittle test of some kind. And because it's not standardized, any brittle tests, there are people that will lift it up 45 degrees and they'll lift it multiple times. There are people that lift it 90 degrees and they'll put it down one time. There are people that will take a carpeting square and shove it up in there. Of course it gets damaged when you do that. You're basically forcing the shingle to break in half. All of these things are different ways of performing a brittle test. I've seen engineers lift a corner. I saw this one engineer lift a corner, it break off in his hand, and he literally told me, well, a qualified contractor would do a better job and be able to make repairs. Bullshit. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You've never made a repair in your life. You think that a contractor is going to be more careful than what you just did trying to lift up a corner? Lifting a corner is not a repairability assessment. It just isn't. And anybody that's doing that is not doing a service to the homeowner whatsoever. Can you repost the AI program I just got on? Yes. aitools.relly.com/AI-met. And then I'll put it up on here. Wow, that link. If you're interested as a contractor to get involved in that, it does start in 2 days and there are limited seats. So jump on that way you can. It will sell out. It's definitely, we want it to be a small class. We do have limited seats on that. So if you're interested in it, it's a no-brainer. It's less than $1,000 and it's worth more than $7,000. It's worth more than $7,000 all day long. And it's less than $1,000. If you're a contractor working on claims, I promise you, you will get a lot of value out of that. Jump on that. You'll be the very first class to go through this as well. We're gonna work together to get you up to speed. All right, where am I at on this? It's Leland class. Thank you. Okay. Is there any way to stop insurance carriers from sending out third-party ladder assists? The problem with this is several of these guys is that they skip a lot of damage and they're always in a hurry and do not do a thorough inspection. Can we stop them from sending out ladder assists? We can request that they don't. Many policies specify in the condition section that you must cooperate in the investigation. It is a normal tenet of a policy that you must cooperate in the investigation. However, if you're a public adjuster and you care about the semantics of this, and if you go into the definition section or the very beginning of the policy, it will define we and us. We and us is sometimes defined as the insurance company that wrote the policy. Sometimes we and us is defined as the insurance company that wrote the policy and any of our representatives or any company that we hire. And in the condition section, where the policyholder has to meet these conditions in order to gain the benefits of the policy, it'll say, you must provide us access to the damaged property, or you must show us the damaged property as often as we reasonably require. So it uses the words we and us, and that's why the definition matters. So if the definition for we and us is the insurance company that wrote the policy, and you must provide us access to the damaged property to view the damaged property, or you must show us the damaged property as often as we reasonably require. If that is just the insurance company that's listed, then you could argue that you are not required to give access to a third party. Making that argument, not the greatest argument in the world to make, because you don't look like you are cooperating. So whether or not that's true or not, doesn't really matter if you look like you're being a jerk. Rule number one in dealing with claims, no matter if you're a contractor or a public adjuster, is don't be a dick. So you want to cooperate, but you can request that they send somebody else out. We request that you don't send a ladder assist, you send a licensed adjuster for this claim. The policyholder should be the one making that request. Whether they do it or not doesn't really matter. Here's the real key. Just claim the right damages. Ladder assists are only looking for functional damage. That's what they're trained to do. If you claim cosmetic damage, and that's what you have, and there's no exclusion in the policy for it, some policies have that, but if there isn't an exclusion in policy for it, and you're claiming cosmetic damage, this is what we found. We found cosmetic damage, and the policyholder sends that in, and the carrier is going to have to investigate it. I have often had a conversation with a ladder assist on site. Listen, before we get up there, I want you to know we verified with the policyholder that their policy does not exclude cosmetic damages caused by hail. And that's what's on this roof. Are you allowed to inspect for cosmetic damages, or are you only allowed to look for functional damage the way that Hague defined it? And oftentimes they'll tell me that they're only allowed to look for Hague hail, or they won't tell me at all. They won't answer that question. But if they do answer the question, they'll say they're only allowed to look for Hague hail unless the adjuster says otherwise, or damages, functional damage from wind. And so you can say, listen, since the policyholder does have that, can we call the adjuster real quick and get them to verify with you so that you can look for the cosmetic damages that are there? And then, especially if it's hail damage, be on the roof. Have it marked up already. I know that's controversial. I know you're going to piss some adjusters off. Have it marked up already, because the policyholder has to claim something. And if you haven't identified what they're claiming, then they have nothing to investigate. Have it marked up already. I don't care if they put CC all over everything. Have it marked up. And right at the top of it, right? Cosmetic damage in giant letters, 2 courses wide. Cosmetic damage caused by hail. If that's what you have, freaking write that. Make it show up in their photographs. Make them say, oh, we don't cover that. And then they'll have to prove that there's an exclusion that doesn't exist in the policy. There's many different ways that you can document a loss and show to the carrier, present it to the carrier. You might rub someone the wrong way. Mr. Adjuster, I'm really sorry. I went ahead and marked up this roof. I know that some adjusters have a hard time with that, or they don't like it. I'm not trying to make your job harder. Really, I just wanted to make sure that you had enough time to take a look at all the damages instead of spending the next half hour trying to find the damage. It's already marked there. I can promise you this, though, and here's the real key to this. I can promise you this. I don't mark bullshit. So if you are good at your inspections and you know what the damage looks like and you're not going to mark bullshit, mark up the roof. If you are mid on whether or not you can identify damages, don't mark up the roof. Brand new guys should not be marking up the roof before the adjuster shows up. But if you know what you're doing, and if you want more instruction on what to do or what to find or mark, become a member of the Building Experts Institute, where there's training on that. Or invite me out to do some private training with your team. We'll get some hands-on training on that. I have a hail cannon. We can shoot some shit with hail and show you what it looks like in real life. Hands-on. Brelly not only does amazing stuff, it saves loads of time. It's worth the time it will save you alone, but it's much, much more than that. Okay, shameless plug in here, but we have been using it for a while, and I recommend to any contractor. I feel like I owe Brandon Ford a little bit of money suddenly. Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Brandon's been one of our early adopters of Brelly, and he's gone through a lot of growing pains with us. And we've learned a lot from Brandon and other contractors and public adjusters that have been utilizing the program on how it is that they utilize it so that we can provide the best experience possible, the most value possible. I have some videos on my YouTube channel and in Reels on all the social medias of us utilizing Brelly live. You can go back and you can find those. But it is adapting so quickly. We have new features coming out every single week. The contractor profile that we've built out for this 6-week program that starts in 2 days is not what you see on those lives. What you see on those lives is the public adjuster profile and what the public adjuster tools can do. Policyholder has the same ability to use a lot of those same tools the public adjuster can have, but the contractor stuff, what matters to contractors is writing a good inspection and writing a good scope of work and being able to argue for those things, for the stuff that matters to you. If you can't provide a good evaluation of what occurred, then the policyholder is not going to be able to prove their loss. When the carrier says they will not perform any inspection if there is video or audio recording, they don't care about no exception of privacy on private property, DOI, or another option. I would love to know what state you're in. If you are in a single party state, that means that only one party has to acknowledge that they are being recorded and consent to that for a recording to exist. If you're in a two-party state, I'm not a lawyer, by the way. This is how I understand it. I could be wrong. Be skeptical about what I'm saying right now. I could be wrong. Ask a lawyer in your state. But if you're in a two-party state, then both parties involved would have to agree to being recorded. If you're on private property, supposedly there's no expectation of privacy on private property. If the policyholder requires audio and video recording what's going on their property, they have every right to require that. That's why security cameras are a thing on private property. If the carrier is not going to perform an inspection, what if there was a security camera up and it was always recording no matter what? Would they never come out and do an investigation after a loss? Does that mean that the policyholder never has the ability to gain any benefits from their policy because the carrier isn't going to perform an investigation? We're not talking about something that is a lack of cooperation. You're allowing them on site to view the damaged property. You're just going to record it because the policyholder wants you to. I think that's a ridiculous thing for a carrier to say that. The policyholder wanted to make us think about it. Like, you're not going to allow someone on site. If I record you on site, then you must be assuming that that person coming on site is going to do something inappropriate or illegal. If that isn't the case, if you have nothing to hide, then come out and investigate my property. I've made a claim. That's your next step. Nothing in my policy says that I can't record what's going on my private property. I've got security cameras in places too. I got a ring camera. Are you never going to come on site because I have those things? Policyholder needs to get really irate about this kind of thing. This is stupid. Carriers need to stop this crap. If you're worried about there not being a video or audio, then there must be something shady going on. I've reviewed 3 engineer reports and put 3 sworn proof of losses while you've been on tonight. Using Brelly? With Brelly. Yeah, you have. Yeah, you have. Brelly's about to get a huge upgrade too on the proof of loss side of things. All right, let me get rid of this banner. If you are interested in getting repairability assessment certified as a repairability assessor, go to that page, buildingexperts.institute/events/schedule. If you are interested, I'll tell you what, I'm going to post a link for private training thing too, real quick. Discovery call, copy link. No, not that one. I want to go to, give me 2 seconds, guys. I'm going to post one more link. Copy link, that one, and go back in here. Banner. Bam. And bam. If you are interested in finding out about private training for your team, where I could come in and teach your team either about the documentation that's necessary to provide to the carrier and when to provide it, or anything else. Maybe we talk about identifying damages on low slope or steep slope roofs, or any of the 49 different courses I do. If you're interested in private training on working claims, I'm your guy. It's super detailed and it's my favorite thing to do. Reach out to me, calendly.com/listen to this bull. You probably don't need that last slash. And then find the one that says private training discovery call. It's only 15 minutes long. Book some time with me. Reach out to me like today or tomorrow if you want to book for July, because I'm going to be fully booked in July otherwise. But if you're interested, reach out to me, even if it's going to have to be in August. But reach out as soon as you can. So these are the 3 links to do stuff with me. I hope that that is sufficient. I don't think I've got any more questions in the system. I think that we're just going to close this down. We did really, last question. This is the last question. Don't bother posting any more questions. On Instagram, On-Site Adjusting asked, do you know anything about water damage claims and damaged cabinets? I live in a non-matching state looking for strong arguments and getting tops and bottoms replaced if bottoms are damaged. We actually talked about that at the very beginning of this. Scott Steffens mentioned that he uses the parent set clause for cabinets. I have done the same. Parent set clause in policies is basically a matching clause. It says this is a set. This is a set of cabinets and one of them is damaged. We need to replace it with the same set. If I can't get the same ones to replace that individual portions of that set, then I'm going to have to replace all of it, or you're going to pay, in essence, a depreciated value of the set. So there is a clause there, parent set clause, for a lot of policies that covers dwelling, other structures, and personal property, not just personal property. Live in a non-matching state. It's not really a matching issue though either. So it's an indemnity issue. They had one set of cabinets that all matched and now they don't. So if there is an anti-matching clause in the policy for this, then it matters. Non-matching state just means there's no statute, there's no case law that says that the state is a matching state or a line of state or anything along those lines. There might be a bulletin from the Department of Insurance about it. There might not be. But if you're in a non-matching state, that just means that there isn't anything statutorily required. But the policy is a matching policy. Any policy that pays for like kind of quality or something along those lines, that's an ambiguous statement. What is like kind of quality? It's ambiguous, which means that the way that you interpret that is the way that it benefits the policyholder most, which makes it a matching clause. So there has to be an exclusion in the policy for matching for it to matter. And a lot of the exclusions in the policies for matching are tied to roofing and siding materials and not so much about anything else. And so take a look at whatever anti-matching clause there is in the policy, if there is one. Take a look at the parent set clause in the policy. Those two things will probably get you where you need to go. If you want some specific help on that, you can actually use this Calendly link that's on the screen right now, and you can book me for individual claims consultations on that same link. You can book me to talk about private training for 15 minutes, and we'll just go through what it is your team might need, talk about that, or you can book me to work with you on a claim on an hourly basis. Same link. All right? That was the last question I'm going to take. Guys, really appreciate you. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to go eat something. I'll see you guys later.